Hi 7th graders, I hope you've been doing well. Today we're going to work on lesson 4.5, which is all about rate of change. Our learning target for today is I can calculate the rate of change using a table and a graph. Alright, let's get started. So right at the top we have our definition of rate of change. So at rate of change, it is a ratio that describes how one quantity changes in relation to another. So the part that is the most important is this part in the middle, the formula. Rate of change is the change in y over the change in x. So now let's practice an example of that. Make sure you fill that out. This is super important. Okay? Our example, we have a table that talks about the number of cars being washed and the number of money, or the total money that this car wash is making. Okay, so we need to find the rate of change. So we need to figure out what's changing in our y numbers and what's changing in our x numbers. Okay, so rate of change is y over x. So let's start with our y first. So to get from 24 to 40, well, that's adding because it's going up, and we need to figure out how much it's adding. If you're not sure, we can subtract 40 minus 24, which gives us 16. So we're adding 16. And then to get from 40 to 56, we're also adding 16. And same thing from 56 to 72, we're adding 16. So our change in our y value is going up $16. So it's positive because we're adding. Alright, now let's figure out our change in x values. So from 3 to 5, we're going up 2. 5 to 7, we're also going up 2. And 7 to 9, we're also going up 2. So our change in x is 2, and then we're talking about cars. I'm going to move all this down. I like labeling my work so that I understand, so that I have an idea of what we're talking about. So right now our rate of change is $16 per 2 cars. But if we think about that as a fraction, we can simplify 16 over 2. We can divide 16 divided by 2, and we get $8, and that's talking about per car. This car wash is making $8 each car. Alright, so that is what rate of change is. We'll be doing quite a few examples, both from tables and from graphs. Alright, so if that example didn't quite make sense, hang in there. We still got a long way to go. Alright, so let's look at number 1. We need to find the rate of change, and this time we're talking about the number of minutes with the cost associated with those minutes. Alright, so always remember our top one is our x, our bottom one is our y. So the minutes is x, the cost is y. Our rate of change, we need to find our change in y first. So to get from 38 to 50, we're going up, so we're adding. And we are adding 12. If you didn't know that, you could subtract those two numbers to figure out how much we're adding. From 50 to 62, we're also adding 12. And 62 to 74, we're also adding 12. So our change in y is 12, and we're talking about dollars. Alright, now let's do our change in x. So from 1,000 to 1,500, we're going up 500. From 1,500 to 2,000, we're also going up 500. And then from 2,000 to 2,500, we're also going up 500. Alright, and we're talking about 500 minutes. So you can shorten minutes. And now we have 12 over 500. We want to simplify those two numbers. What could we divide both of those numbers by? There's a few options. We could divide both of them by 2, or we could divide both of them by 4. Let's divide by 4. Well, 12 divided by 4 gives us 3, and remember, we're still talking about dollars. And then 500 divided by 4 is 125 minutes. And we can't simplify those two numbers again. So our rate of change is $3 per 125 minutes. You could leave it in a fraction form or you could write it in a word form. Either works. Alright, so that was one example of rate of change. Let's do another one. Alright, this time we're talking about time and the number of pages left. They must be reading a book. So our X is the top one, our Y is the bottom one. So let's start with our change in Y. We're going from 12 to 9. Well, this time, that number is getting smaller, and we're subtracting 3. Let's make sure, 9 to 6, we're also subtracting the 3, and 6 to 3, we're also subtracting 3. So our change in Y is a -3, and we're talking about pages. Alright, now let's go up and do our change in X. So from 1 to 3, our number's getting bigger, we're adding 2. From 3 to 5, we're also adding 2. And 5 to 7, we're also adding 2. And we're talking about minutes. So our change in X is 2 minutes. Alright, so looking at a -3 over 2, we can't divide both of those numbers by anything. So that is our rate of change. And if we want to write it out in word form, we have 3 pages left, or we go down 3 pages every 2 minutes. Alright, so that was number 2. Let's move on to number 3. This time our table looks a little bit different, but don't worry, it's still talking about the exact same thing. So this time our X is on the left and our Y is on the right. We're talking about time and the number of steps. Alright, so let's start with our change in Y. To get from 288 to 480, we need to figure out what we're doing. So I don't have that fact memorized. So let's take 480 minus 288. Well, we can't do 0 minus 8, so we need to regroup. 10 minus 8 gives us 2. We can't do 7 minus 8, so we have to borrow. So we're taking 17 minus 8, which is 9. 3 minus 2 gives us 1. So we're adding 192 steps. So that is our change in Y. 192 steps. And then our change in X, we're going from 3 to 5, and that is going up 2. So we're talking about 2 minutes. Alright, now we have 192 over 2. We want to simplify that so it's easy to understand. So we could divide both of those numbers by 2. Alright, 192 divided by 2, I don't have memorized. 2 goes into 19 9 times. 2 times 9 is 18. Subtract, we get 12. 2 goes into 12 6 times. So we're left with 96 steps on the top. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1 minute. Alright, so every minute you're walking 96 steps. So 96 steps per minute, or every minute. Whoops. Per minute. Alright, so that is our rate of change for number 3. We always find the change in Y first, and then we find the change in X. So let's go on to our last one with the table. This time we're talking about time and height. Alright, so starting with our Y, we're going from 456 to 268. Well, I know right off the bat that those numbers are getting smaller. So we need to subtract those two numbers to figure out by how much. Alright, 6 minus 8 we can't do, so let's regroup. 16 minus 8 is 8. We can't do 4 minus 6, so we need to borrow again. 14 minus 6 is 8 again, and 3 minus 2 is 1. So we're subtracting 188. Then from 268 to 80, we are also subtracting 188. You could double check it if you wanted, or if you knew that off the top of your head, then you wouldn't need to subtract. So our change in y is negative 188 feet. Alright, now our change in x, from 0 to 1, we're adding 1. From 1 to 2, we're also adding 1. So our change in x is 1 second. Alright, so then to write this out as words, we are going down 188 feet every second, or per second. Alright, so that was how to find find the rate of change from a table. Now let's move on to finding a rate of change from a graph. Alright, so let's start with number 1. We are talking about the fuel level in a car tank, and our x is the time in minutes, and our y is the fuel level per gallon. Alright, so we are going to find our change in y. So if you notice, they have 2 dots on our graph for us. So let's just use those 2 numbers. Okay, our y value is at 8, and it's also somewhere between 16 and 24. We need to figure out what that number is. Well, if you notice, from 0, there's a line in between to get to 8. Halfway between 0 and 8 is 4. So I think we're going up by 4s every time. So 8 plus 4 is 12, 16 plus 4 is 20. Alright, so now we're looking at 20 and we're looking at 8. How much is that changing? Right, it's going up 12, and we're talking about gallons. So our y value is 12 gallons. And now let's look at our x values. We're going from 1 all the way to 4. Well, from 1 to 4, we're adding 3. So we're talking about 3 minutes. Alright, and then we know we can simplify both of those numbers. We can divide both of those numbers by 3, so go ahead and do so. 12 divided by 3 is 4 gallons. 3 divided by 3 is 1 minute. So our fuel level is 4 gallons per minute. And that is our rate of change for number 1. Alright, number 2, we are talking about aircraft altitude. Our x is the time in minutes, and our y is our altitude in feet. So we want to find our altitude, or find our change in y, so we're looking at our altitude. Alright, starting from 0, we're just following our graph. Our first dot is right here, and that is at 3,000. And then our second dot is at 2,000. So from 3,000 to 2,000, what is happening? Right, we're going down. We're going down 1,000. Alright, so that is our change in y, a negative 1,000 feet. So our aircraft must be slowly descending and coming back to land. Alright, now let's find our change in our x value. So again, following our graph, our first dot is right here at 2. Then our second dot is at 6. So from 2 to 6, we are adding 4 minutes. And we know we can simplify both of those numbers. We can divide them both by 4. 1,000 divided by 4 gives us a negative 250 feet. And 4 divided by 4 is 1 minute. So our aircraft is going down 250 feet per minute or every minute. Alright, I hope this is starting to make sense. I'd like you to try number 3 and number 4 on your own and then check your answers with me. So I would pause the video. I'm going to work on 3 and 4 and I'll explain what I'm doing, but I want you to make sure that you're understanding it before the video's over. Alright, so number 3, we're talking about James's fees. Alright, so our X is the number of hours that James works, and our Y is the total cost. Alright, so this time there's a bunch of dots on the graph. You really only need to worry about 2 of them. So I don't know about you, but I like keeping my numbers small and easy to work with, so I'm just going to start with the first 2 dots that I see on the graph. Alright, so starting out, my first dot I see is at $60, and my second dot I see is at $80. So from $60 to $80, I'm going up 20. Alright, so our change in Y is $20. And now we need to use those 2 same dots to find our change in X. So our first one was at 1, our second one was at 3. From 1 to 3, that's going up 2 hours. Alright, now we know that we can simplify both of those numbers. We can divide by 2. 20 divided by 2 gives us $10. 2 divided by 2 gives us 1 hour. So James's fee is $10 per hour. Awesome. And our last one, we're talking about draining a bathtub. So we're talking about the time in minutes, which is our X, and the number of gallons, which is our Y. So let's start with our Y value. Our first dot we see is at 60. And our second dot is over here at 30. So from 60 to 30, our numbers are going down. How much are they going down? Right, they're going down 30. So we're talking about a negative 30 gallons. And now using those same 2 dots, we're going to figure out our time in minutes, the change that it's happening. So our first one was at 0. Our second dot was at 4. From 0 to 4, that's going up 4 minutes. Alright, and we can divide both of those numbers by 2 because they're both even. A negative 30 divided by 2 gives us a negative 15. We're talking about gallons. 4 divided by 2 is 2 minutes. Alright, so our bathtub is draining a negative 15 gallons every 2 minutes. And that is our rate of change. Alright, if you made it all the way to this part, you can go ahead and message me the word bathtub and you will get a bonus point. Otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day, work on the IXLs, and let me know if you have questions. Bye, 7th grade.